Hey everybody, this is Jacob here from the KitHack Model Club development team, and today I'm going to show you the basics of using the scenario editor so you can get up and started with making your own missions. And for a practice mission today, we are going to show you how to make a basic target shooting mission. So we'll jump in, without further ado, into the scenario editor and have a look around. So we will start a new mission instead of using the one that I was practicing on before starting this recording. And the first thing that you're going to notice is this big panel on the right, which talks about stages and it talks about modules. Stages are the main flow of the mission that you're creating. Say you can imagine like a triathlon where there might be like a running and a swimming and a biking section that like you can theoretically break up into like different stages of the mission. That is the same idea here, and you can flow through stages using different trigger events. Like say you pass a waypoint, and then after passing the waypoint, it progresses you to the next stage. So we'll create a blank stage to start, and for this mission, we're just going to use one stage, and we will name it. Oops, cap locks is on. Target shooting. Okay. The next thing you're going to notice is this module panel under here. This is the main driver for the logic of your missions. If we add a module, you'll see there's this whole tree view of all sorts of different components that you can add that do logic for the missions and help move things along. We will start with a basic gameplay rules, and we'll lock some things. We don't want the player to be able to recover their vehicle or be able to pick up their vehicle either. So we'll set both of those to false, and that will be running consistently throughout the whole stage unless we want to have a trigger for it to start on, which we don't. We want it to keep going. So that is the basics of the modules there. We'll save that, and we'll do test mission 3 because I had to make the recording a few times. When you save a mission, it is going to save it into a folder, so that way you can keep all of your other assets there. If say you have like some craft files for AI that you're competing against, and that'll all be saved in the folder that the mission is living with inside of. So there is the basics on the right side, and you'll see on the top left there's a bunch of different buttons here that we'll go over a few of. The first one is mission settings. This is super basic information about your mission, like the name, description, briefing, information, all of that stuff. Also, if you want to be able to save stats, then you need a place for that to be created within the game, and you can do that by clicking this button down here called Create Career Data, and we'll do that now because we'll need that later. So we'll close that out there. You can use these here to open the file as text, which sometimes can be useful, but for the most part you shouldn't need to open those up. And the next thing that's going to be important is adding props. So again, we get another one of these tree views with all of the different props. Most things are pretty basic stuff, like cones, guide things, buoys for water races, and you can just place those all around. I'm just holding shift so I can add multiple, and then if I place one there, whoops. And then we'll also add some props that have actions. We can add a build table, and this is the same thing as a workshop, but it is accessible right here in the mission, which is awesome, so we can use that whenever we want. And there's also some procedurally generated props as well. Like runways are a good example of that. So this like resupply runway, for example, if you place this down, then when your vehicle is on it, it can resupply the vehicle. But the main thing that we are here for is to create a target shooting mission. So under objectives, shootables, 5mm target, and we'll place 2 of those down. Great. So we'll give this a run, and we'll see how that turns out. We'll save it and start it. So we can run around here, open the table. We'll play around with the Peacekeeper to make sure that the targets work. It looks like some of these props double spawn. That's just an early pre-release bug that we'll hopefully have fixed here soon. But since they're double spawn, it takes 2 hits, but after the second hit, yes, they do disappear. So perfect, our props are in the game. That's awesome. We will go back into the scenario editor and we'll end the mission. Now we have the targets here, but we don't have a way to set a score from that, which is pretty important if you ask me. So we will right-click on the targets here, and you'll see we get a properties panel with all sorts of information where we can change how the score multiplies based on how you hit the target, which is going to be super important if you want more custom missions where maybe it's range-based target shooting or something like that. And you can change all these values. For example, we'll just change this up to 45. Super easy to do. Now, right now, it's not saving the value to anything. It has this hit score box right here, but there's no variable there. It wants a parameter that it can add the score to, and it wants to create that for us automatically if we click this button. So that takes us to the parameters panel, which can also be accessed through up here. We'll close it out and open it from there. And it automatically created this parameter for us, which is a float. If you're not a programmer, then that is just a decimal number, whereas like an int is a whole number and a bool, short for boolean, is like a true or false value. So it's going to add the score up as a decimal number here, and it's going to do that for us automatically on that target. But it doesn't do it for the other target yet, so we'll need to right-click that. And this time we don't want to create a new one. We want to use this to link it to the existing score parameter. And now that's all set up. What we don't have, though, is a way to keep track of how many targets we have hit so far. So what we need to be able to do there is keep track every time the trigger for the target being hit goes off. What I mean by that is in this properties panel, if you click trigger, there's this event on hit by local player. Essentially, every time the player hits the target, it's going to fire off that event, and other things can listen to it to see if that has happened. We can connect that up to an integer variable that will essentially just count up how many times we have hit the target. So we'll go ahead and we'll add a new parameter there. Add mission parameter. And we'll call that number of targets hit. We want it to be an integer because it's a whole number. And right here we have this trigger v+1. What that means is every time this trigger goes off, it's going to increase the value by 1, which is exactly what we want, except for it only takes in 1 trigger and there's 2 targets. So we need to be able to combine those into one thing, which we can do pretty simply with a module. So we'll close out all of this, and we will add a new module. Under trigger logic, we have this multi-trigger. We're going to add 2 of them, 1 for each of the targets, and we can link that up, the same as we did before, to that on player hit event for both of the targets. Now, if either of the targets are going to hit, it's going to fire this trigger down here. And we can save that as such. So now we want to come back up here to this score hit, number of targets hit parameter. On this first trigger, we want to say on multi-trigger. That's cool. That should hopefully keep track of our number of targets hit, but we don't have a way to actually see that with our own eyes while we're playing the game. So we're going to add a scoreboard, which is also a module under UI, mini scoreboard control, which will give us the ability to place some very basic custom text on the screen. We have 2 things that we want to keep track of, the number of targets hit and the number, and the total score, right? And we want to be able to add the parameters that we had just as string text. And the way to do that would be to come here, and on the far right of each of the parameters there's this little icon, and if you shift click on that, it will copy to your clipboard the syntax for just like pasting it in as a variable in the scoreboard here, or in a script as well. So we have this the score and the number of targets hit. All right, so now when we run the mission, that should show up as information on the screen. To prevent this double spawning issue, which you should not have if you're watching this a couple months or more past me uploading it, but to get past it or having it, just to close that out, open the scenario editor again and run it, and it'll spawn everything for the first time without any hassle. So, oh no, shoot, I forgot to save it. I will be back in 1 second. Hopefully that was a quick second, and it is a very good time to remind you that you should always save your scenario before you either refresh it or close it, because it's not going to save changes automatically. So now that I've got that redone, let's start it up here again. And let's go back to the other side there. Since there's no recovery, we can't just do that automatically. And give her the gun. Awesome. You'll see that the targets hit increments and the score increments too. And that's perfect. The only thing that we haven't done yet, though, is save the score and have the mission actually end after we hit the second target. So let's go ahead and make the conditions for that. Back in the scenario editor, we are going to add a new module here to end the mission. And it is going to be in flow control end mission. We can say that it completes successfully, fails, or aborts. In this case, we just want it to complete successfully. So we can either do it when it fires the left one or fires the right one, or based off this trigger when it fires when either of the targets are hit. But we actually want it to do it when both of the targets are hit. So there's a couple ways to do that, but I want to show you how you can add custom C# scripts, so we will do it the hard way. We'll add a new module, add logic, and click script. So now, every time we increment the number of targets that we've hit, we want to run this script and ask if we have hit 2 targets, because that's the total number of targets, and if we have, then we want to fire off a trigger that will come to this end mission and then end the whole thing. So we'll connect this trigger from the script to execute on the value change for the number of targets hit. And under here, we're going to write a quick one-liner, if, and then we can do this shift-click on here to get the exact value of that and add that in the code. If the number of targets hit equals 2, then we want to fire off a trigger, and the syntax for that is the 2 arrow brackets on the outside and 2 square brackets on the inside, and then you define the name of the trigger. In this case, it's going to be called end mission. And then we'll compile that. We got the green light, so it must be working right. And now we have this trigger that appears down here at the bottom. So we can connect that up to end mission. Mission completes on this script end mission trigger being fired. Great. Now, after we've hit both targets, the mission should end. But what it's not going to do is save the score, so that way we can save our best and look back and admire the best that we've done. To do that, next to the parameters panel, we have this mission stats, and we just want to create one new stat for best score, and we will connect it up to the existing parameter that we have, which is the score, the total score hit. And it's going to read that every time that the value changes, which is perfect. So we'll close that out, change the name here. And now we should have a stat when the mission ends. So we're going to save this. I'm going to try to get past this bug here. There we go. You shouldn't have to deal with that. We are working on that one. No worries. And now we will start the mission. All right, let's see if it works. All right, 2 targets hit. There was a 5-second delay, so it should come up about now. There it is. And there's another small bug there where it double listed the score. Again, that should be gone in no time. But as you see, it did list the score properly, so we got 1600 as the best score. The mission ended. And that is the basics of using the scenario editor in KitHack. If you're not already aware of KitHack, you should totally check us out. We are releasing on April 15th here into early access. And if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask them in the Discord, where me and the other devs and a whole community full of kit hackers will be there to help you. Happy kit hacking.